Welcome back, everyone, to Fantasy Football Weather Guys. We're here with Week 10 weather updates. I am joined by our on-staff meteorologists, Dr. Mike Ventris and Sean Brad. How are you guys?
Doing well, buddy. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Sean, how are you?
Doing good. Just got finished having a whole bunch of Halloween candy, so I'm getting ready for Thanksgiving now. I'm getting ready for the fantasy playoffs coming up soon.
You know, that doesn't surprise me at all, Sean. You just love your food.
I always love anytime there's an opportunity to eat food.
Even if it's half-eaten.
If anybody knows me, they know I will take advantage of that.
But Sean, I will say you look exceptionally well today.
Is it because of this here? Is it because of what I have on?
So to the people listening to the podcast, Sean's showing our new shirt off.
Yeah.
Sean,
so I had these custom made for our group. Since I made the effort to purchase them, I got mine first. Yesterday I shipped out Mike's and Colin's, so hopefully they'll have theirs for next week.
That's a funny story, Sean, about shipping.
God.
Well, hell, I didn't know it was going to cost $30 to ship 2 shirts.
Well,
I mean, how is why?
Well, because you didn't go to the post office.
Oh, well, yeah. UPS, don't use UPS. Sorry.
Very fancy. No, we don't dislike UPS. It's just it's a fancy service.
It's fancy.
So as you can see from where the conversation is headed is that we are actually not really discussing the weather this week, and that's due to us not really experiencing or seeing any impactful weather for the weekend. But, you know, Mike, do you want to give us a little rundown of last week, even though it wasn't too impactful either, but what we saw or what we didn't see?
Yeah, so here's the whirlwind round. Ready? There it goes. Not a whole lot of weather at all to talk about. Conditions, and I got another win, so I'm happy.
Yeah, there is, and that pattern seems to be continuing. We just, and Mike will show our graphics here in just a minute, but we have no cautions out for this week, as we did last week as well. There may be some minor concerns for maybe wind, maybe some lake effect precipitation like last week, but nothing to be concerned about, nothing that we think is going to have any substantial impact. So if we go and look at, there is one system that's kind of lingering. We refer to this system as an Alberta Clipper because it originates over the Alberta province of Canada. It's usually a typically very dry system. And so we're looking at mean sea level pressure and precipitation. And where Mike has his cursor right now is the storm I'm referring to. And it looks like we have a frontal feature that's kind of digging down into the Great Lakes. And we originally thought that this may impact some of the games over the Midwest because we have games in Green Bay and Chicago and Cleveland and also Buffalo. But it looks like that system's going to be too dry, and it's also going to be a little bit too far north to really have any meaningful impact for these games. The only game I think it may potentially is maybe the Bills game with Cleveland, but I don't think that's going to really be an impact at all.
Yeah, these Alberta Clippers coming out of Canada, they're usually driven by cold air coming out of Canada, which we're about to get a whole lot of moving forward in the next week. And these storms are dry. So you'll get some precip, but it's not going to be like that heavy precipitation rates that we need to see to have any meaningful impact. So
yeah, and in what maybe, I don't know if you saw when Mike did have up his map, but we have a really strong high pressure digging its way into the Midwest region, again, as Mike mentioned, for this upcoming weekend. And we're going to have some pretty anomalously cold weather, and that also means it's going to be very dry. So almost the whole continental U.S. is just going to be just not a whole lot going on.
As Jon Snow would say, winter is coming.
Winter is coming. It's coming early this year.
I would say in upstate New York, winter's here.
Yeah, fair enough. Snowed at your mom's place today.
In the Finger Lakes. Well, I guess that wraps up our weather report for this week's episode of Fantasy Football Non-Weather Guys. Funny joke.
You corny bun.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where's my tomato?
What?
My tomato.
I don't get that.
With comedians, stand-up comedians that do a poor job, they get tomatoes thrown at them. Don't you know this?
I have a joke for the group today that I heard.
Okay.
What do you call a bear with no teeth?
A bear with no teeth. Well,
I have no idea.
Sounds like, I don't know. Yeah, you're going to have to tell us this one.
A gummy bear.
Oh.
And on that note, we're going to shift to our next round, or segment. We're going to get into the lightning round. And for our new listeners and viewers, our lightning round is going to be where the goal is to talk about impact of sit-start decisions by the weather. However, without the weather being an impact, we're still going to provide some sit-start decisions that we're going to debate as the group. And I will, reveal the pairings, and we'll just start the discussion. So I'm just going to start with Mike's this week. He picked Todd Gurley and Ronald Jones.
I'm going with Ronald Jones. Todd Gurley is facing a improved Pittsburgh defense who's gotten more than 10 fantasy points for you, at least in our league, in all games other than really one. And they've also allowed less than 30 points in almost every single one of their games except one as well. And teams are not running very much against Pittsburgh as well. And the thing with Todd Gurley is he's only getting around his last 3 games. He's only gotten 50 yards, but he's gotten 3 TDs. So it's really padded his stats. Here's the thing. Pittsburgh only allows on average around a half a touchdown a game. And over the last 3 games, they've allowed 0 touchdowns. And he's not getting, he's getting around, averaging around 15 carries. So that's a good amount, but he's not being super efficient with that. On the other side, we have Ronald Jones going against a very mediocre Arizona defense. And those who are following the news, Ronald Jones has kind of gotten the torch here. Barber's no longer really in the picture. He got 4 carries last week. You have Agumbawale, who's really taking over some of the passing work. But Barber, over the last 4 games, had 4 carries for 10 yards and a touchdown. Not great, right? Then 11 for 35. And then last week, 18 for 67 yards and a TD. So I expect those trends to continue. Arizona's allowing about 4.5 yards a carry. And people are running the ball 28 plus times against them a game. So I'm going with Ronald Jones here.
So when it comes to these picks, I noticed that there was a pretty large price differential in DraftKings between these 2 running backs, right? Todd Gurley priced at 6,100 in DraftKings, Ronald Jones 4,300. And as Sean mentioned here in this in-depth analysis, Pittsburgh is a tough defense, right? Over under in that game is 45, where Rams are 3.5 favorites. When Ronald Jones going up against a mediocre defense, he has the confidence in the starting of the coaches now. He started last week for the first time. The over-under in that game is 52, right? We're a 4-point favor for the Buccaneers. So, and that's actually the highest over-under out of all games this week. So there's going to be points scored. Ronald Jones looks to be a pretty significant aspect of that offense moving forward. And I'm not really sure I trust the health of Todd Gurley, right? It's something that seems to be kind of fishy. He played 1 quarter last week, and then Darrell Henderson Jr. got the rest of the touches, right? So there's something wrong with him. So
I would agree with that. I think, Mike, to your point with that over-under, I think that's a really big story here because, like I mentioned, Pittsburgh has been really stout in the red zone. They're not allowing those rushing TDs, and that's where Gurley is getting you those fantasy points. It's not his efficiency right now. I don't know, that injury obviously definitely had an impact going into this year as opposed to looking at his numbers last year. Ronald Jones, they're getting in the red zone. Like Tampa Bay, even if Ronald Jones is not getting work on the opposite side of the field, they're going to pass the ball, and he's going to get work in the red zone, and I think he's going to end up with at least 1 rushing TD here.
Yeah, and he's I think he's the better price running back here if you're making a decision on daily fantasy.
Yeah, $1,800 difference, so that's huge.
We're going to do Dak Prescott, Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, so Stafford's going up against Chicago, right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Cowboys are
Vikings.
So for me, this is a tough decision because Stafford's been playing out of his mind, and I feel like Prescott has been doing well as well. It's just like since Kerryon Johnson got hurt, right, went on IR, it seems like Stafford's just been throwing all day. To me, I'm gonna go with Dak Prescott here. I feel like I want to shake it up a little bit. He's been reliable. 3 touchdowns last week. I know Minnesota's been pretty good, but on defense. But I feel like this is a gut call this week for me. I think Prescott will continue to do well and use his legs to keep that ceiling or that floor at least a little bit elevated compared to Stafford. It's a gut call though.
I agree. I'm going a little bit more on stats, but I'm going to go with Dak Prescott. In the last 2 games against non-backup quarterbacks, the Vikings have allowed 6 touchdowns and a pair of the top 8 fantasy performances from Carson Wentz and Matthew Stafford. I know Matthew Stafford has been on fire, but we also have to remember the Bears defense has only allowed 4 touchdowns and fewer than 15 fantasy points when they're playing at Soldier Field. So I think that I'm not going gut. I'm going on stats, and I'm saying Dak Prescott. Stats for Dak.
Yeah, I think the other thing worth mentioning here is like the coaching staff is putting their trust in Dak Prescott, and he is getting 30, 40 attempts per game. They're going to be throwing the ball in this game. And for the Bears game, I think it's a relatively low over-under for that Bears Detroit game. And they're going to be playing at Soldier Field in pretty windy conditions. Not that we think this is going to have a tremendous influence, but, you know, Stafford has averaged over 300 yards over this stretch where he's just been absolutely amazing. And he does have Golladay. He does have Marvin Jones and Hockenson as well, the new tight end. But I think he's going to underperform a little bit this week. I would actually also be going with Dak here, although I think this one's going to be close. This one's definitely going to be really close. But I think that Dak's going to have that opportunity, leg up on the opportunity.
So we got a special one for you. Sean, of course, overachiever as he always was in college and in life, came up with one with 3 options. Davante Adams, John Brown, or Golladay?
Who's going to start this one off?
So I'm
Oh man,
it's a tough one.
I don't want to do Davante Adams just because I feel like Carolina's defense is going to put pressure on on Aaron Rodgers, and after coming off a week where he didn't do much, he's going to get frustrated. I'm worried about it. To me, the decision between John Brown and Golladay, I'm going to go with Golladay. He's been getting a ton of volume. I like John Brown is at Cleveland, but I think that Golladay is a safer play based off of volume.
So this was, even when I was kind of creating this one and thinking through like a really tough start decision, is a lot of people have Davante Adams on their team and they're wondering, what the heck do I do? He's had no TDs this season. And Carolina's been pretty stout. They only allow around 1.2 passing TDs per game. This game could get windy. I'm actually going to this game. I'm going to Lambeau for my first time when they're playing Carolina. Nice. I'm super excited about it. So I get to see this in action. But Davante Adams hasn't showed us a lot. He's getting the targets, but here's the thing. He's not getting the big games. And I don't know if this is going to be an environment for him to get big games. Speaking of big game, I have a note here. Golladay, I'm going to call him Big Play Kenny. So Big Play Kenny, he doesn't need a whole lot of receptions to get you big yards. Against the New York Giants, he had 6 for 123 yards and 2 TDs. And recently against Oakland, only 4 receptions, but 132 yards in 1 TD. And that's all he needs. Even though he's playing a good Chicago defense, he only needs 1 bomb from Stafford to make his day. The only thing with Golladay is he does have a relatively low floor. Against Dallas and Philly, he only had 1 and 2 receptions respectively. John Brown, I think I'm going with him. He's Mr. Consistency. On your team, you need consistency right now. In all of his starts, actually, I should say in 5 of his 8 starts. 5 of 8, he's had over 7 targets or 7 or above, and he's had over 50 yards.
But he's had over 50 yards in every one of his games.
Yeah, he has had in every single one of his games.
So I'm going with Brown, but you got there first, but okay.
Yeah. And, I mean, Cleveland is a bottom 5 or 6 passing defense. They've given up in the last 4 games 31, 32, 21, and 24 points and have only have 2 takeaways. So I think the Bills are going to hold on to the ball. I think they're going to go to John Brown. Even though he's not a touchdown monster, I think he's at least going to get you the points. And if they get near the red zone, they may go to him.
Yeah, I think he has a potential to have a breakout game against the Browns. I'm saying maybe 100+ yard game, even though he hasn't really had one of those yet. I think he could possibly explode. He's probably a top 10 wide receiver to play against the Browns. I think I like him the best.
All right, I'm going to make up some ground here against you guys. Here we go.
Yeah. Wait, who did you pick, Mike?
I went with Golladay.
You went with
The man's
Golladay.
been on fire. Stafford's thrown deep every freaking every 3 dropbacks.
I
All you
know.
need is one, right?
And you know what? The same could be said for Devontae Adams. He's had no TDs this season. I mean, you got to regress to the mean here at some point, and he's due for a breakout game. Do I think it's going to come against Carolina? I don't think so. But Carolina's going to put points on the board with Christian McCaffrey. They're going to be getting the ball downfield too, so they may be in a mode where they need to get the ball in the end zone quick. So this is a tough one, but I'm sticking with Brown. I'm sticking with Brown on this one.
Awesome. That wraps up our lightning round. And now we're going to move on to our last round, our last segment, Thunderstruck. We're going to discuss the bust of the week. Again, supposed to be our whole idea is to do weather impact on players, but with no weather, we still like to discuss fantasy anyway. So this week we have Mike's bust of the week, which is Hooper.
No. So I changed it to DK Metcalf.
Oh,
Apologies, guys. I decided to throw in a last-minute Hail Mary there and go with a safer bet. I went with Kirk Cousins last week, and that was a risky play, so I felt like being a little bit safer this week. So with DK Metcalf, we know the Seahawks just signed Gordon, from the Patriots, dropping him off, and they're starting him, right? He's going to get work, and I think he's going to interfere with Metcalf's he's a one-trick pony type of big body in the end zone, getting those red zone looks. So I think there's going to be regression here with Metcalf's stats, and he's playing against a really tough 49ers defense, just allowing 17.7 fantasy points per game to receivers light out wide, which is where Metcalf has run all of his 86% of his routes. So I'm going with Metcalf as a bust this week.
Yeah, that's a big one because he's just like, I've got my mind's going blank. The other receiver, Lockett. Sorry, that's just like Lockett last year. He lived and died by the TD. That's kind of been DK Metcalf's story this year. And I don't disagree with you. I don't think they're gonna have quite as many opportunities. But Russell Wilson has been on fire this year, throwing 5 TDs last week and just blowing it up. But Mike, it sounds like you think that luck may be coming a little bit to the end this week.
Well, you got a tough matchup and just less volume.
So Sean, you went with
a combo.
We got a happy meal here. We got Goff and Cup duo.
Happy meal. You're speaking my language. Yeah. So here's the thing. They're going to be playing Pittsburgh. We just talked about Pittsburgh with Todd Gurley. I think this is going to be a relatively low-scoring game against Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, where the weather we may have some wind in there, maybe some light precipitation. We don't expect to have a big impact, but it's a tough environment to play. It's a 44-point over/under, and the Pittsburgh has done really well as of late against QBs and wide receivers. And here's the thing. Goff has not had that hard of a schedule. Cooper Kupp, in turn, has not had that hard of a schedule. When they have played, when Jared Goff has played tough defenses like San Francisco, he had 1.1 fantasy points. And even against New Orleans, another tough D, 21 fantasy points. So he struggled against the opportunities he's had with rougher teams. Kupp, again, another correlation. He's done really, really well against like teams like Tampa Bay, where he's gotten 15 targets, Seattle 17, Cincinnati 10. But then against the tougher defenses, San Francisco, he only had 6, New Orleans 9. In Carolina, he had 10, but it was only for 7 receptions and 46 yards, so it was really limited. So I think they're going into a tough environment. I think they're going to be on Kupp. They know that's their number one weapon right now, and I think it limits both of their upside this week.
I hope you're wrong because I'm starting Kupp this week. So,
well, so am I. And this is not a tell like, hey, don't start Kupp. Right. I'm just saying you need to really expect that this may not be a breakout game if you're expecting a 20, 30-point performance. This may be something around 7-8 receptions for maybe 70 yards.
So awesome. That's great. So my bust of the week, I think I've actually picked him, but I kind of did a duo concept also. I went with the Cardinals running backs. I went with David Johnson and Kenyon Drake. Johnson has come out and said that he's going to be playing against the Bucs, but it doesn't really matter who's going to play the Bucs because the Bucs have given up the third fewest fantasy points to running backs. I think he is not going to, if it's Johnson, he's going to be splitting time. Then the value goes down for either one of them. And I think you just got to stay away from him. I think there's an upside that people think that could happen for, these running backs. Drake had one great game, and then he kind of got stifled against the New Orleans Saints, which I think we talked about 2 weeks ago. And I just don't see the value there. So I think stay away from him. It's going to bust. And those are my pick. Yeah.
So Johnson's 100% playing this week. That's what he said in his statement. So
right. But players can always say 100%, but what the coach does, that's a whole different thing.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm
just going to tie this in quickly to last week because the Tampa Bay played the Seattle and Chris Carson. And that was actually my bust of the week last week. And he was projected to be a number 9 running back. He actually ended up as a 24 running back. So, with David Johnson or Kenyon Drake, whoever's back there, expect some maybe limited upside.
I like that. I think I like when you're on my side, Sean.
Which is rare.
Which is very rare. So I think that wraps up week 10. We appreciate the listeners, the viewers. We appreciate you guys following us on social media. Do you guys have anything else to say before we wrap up?
Just that there's going to be weather coming the rest of this year. It's just a matter of time, right? So,
well, there's always weather, but is it inclement? Is it bad weather? I don't even know how to say that word.
Inclement. Yeah. So when there's inclement weather, that's when obviously we'll be focusing more significantly on. So it's going to come. It's going to happen. We've already seen it this year. There's going to be quiet weeks. So this is a quiet week.
Sean, show off that shirt again for our viewers.
Yeah. Fantasy football weather guys.
Hey, if we get enough followers and supporters, maybe you guys can have one of those next year.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the week. Click subscribe if you're following us on YouTube. Get us on our podcast. Subscribe there. Again, thank you. Have a great week. Good luck.
Bye.